Good morning, everybody. Just letting some more people in. No, don't do that. It's nice to virtually meet you. I'm Missy Brown. I'm the Charter Schools Technical Assistance and Training Administrator. I've got my cohort, Dylan Wilson, next to me. He is the
Charter Schools Technical Assistance and Training Specialist. Nice to meet you all.
And then the third member of our party is Lucy Valenzuela, and she is currently hosting another Zoom for the state authorizer, the Public Education Commission. So we have a busy Zoom morning here in the Charter Schools group. I will be sending everybody the PowerPoint presentation when we're done today. So those of you who are on the telephone, if maybe the people who are on your team can put in the chat what your email address is. So I don't have email addresses for Mike Doherty, Laura Chera, and Scott Anderson. And Tracy Esposito. I don't have an email for you either. All right, I will start sharing my screen. Please don't hesitate to raise your hand, virtual hand, unmute yourself, ask a question. Don't worry about interrupting. I don't worry about people asking questions. I encourage it. And I will also open up the chat box. Thank you for those email addresses. So somebody can figure out how to get the people who are on the phone. All right, so this is the first session for the new application training. They are not repeated, they build on one another. We're going to start off with a welcome and some introductions, and then we're going to go over some Charter Schools 101, what our training schedule is, the application process and timeline. I'm going to talk about facilities and frameworks, and then research. So this is a rigorous process. It's rigorous because the authorizers want to ensure the highest quality, most prepared and fully capable teams are making it through this process. And I've emphasized the word teams because this really does take a team of people. And so I sent this invitation to people who I had email addresses from your applications, but I will send it to whomever future ones to whomever you guys say is on your team. I just, again, need that information. So I'm going to ask you guys, I'm going to call on you to please introduce yourselves, give us your name, introduce your team. And then I'm going to have on screen what your school name is and your prospective location. And but please give us a brief description of your planned school and then why you think your planned school is needed in your community. Okay, so we're going to start with Ava Bartu, I think is how you pronounce your name, Ava.
Yes.
Great. So go ahead and do you have, so first of all, do you have anybody else from your team here with us?
No, we actually don't, because I wasn't really sure about the email.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
But I am going to go ahead and send them the PowerPoint because several of them were on the phone with me just now. And I can get them caught up. But yes, I do have a team. What we are located in Sierra County, New Mexico, and we are wanting to have another option for students in Sierra County. There was a private school here for many years, and it was really hard to fund and to get certified staff and such. And I was involved with that in the very beginning of that. And then I went to public school, which was also awesome. And there's we have a huge county. It's giant. And so there's very rural parts of Sierra County, and there's just a need for a variety of options for students here, especially in the agricultural community. As far as farming and ranching go, they live out far. A lot of people are doing homeschool options. Some of them are doing online options. Some of them are doing a huge variety. So we want to take the approach of meeting the needs of the whole student, emotionally, socially, creatively, intellectually, and physically. And also, obviously, we want to bring in the family to have a voice in, what the week looks like, how we can help them, whether it's if they're deciding to stay at home and homeschool, and maybe we can support them with some choices and options with curriculum or advice or whatever, or if they want to do part-time because of agricultural things. But we just were thinking of a different approach here and providing some flexibility and input from families here. That seems to be the outcry of the community. There's lots of families doing that. And my team, we have a diverse team. So Leslie Boone is our one of our service providers here in the county, and she does a wide variety of OT, PT services. And her children are currently being homeschooled, and they were at the private school. And then we have one of the board members is also a member who has served on several other boards. And another service provider here in town is a family therapist, and she actually purchased some properties here in the community, and she's really reaching out to our community and providing some extensive services. She actually bought in the Hot Springs district, so she's creating like a huge wellness center using hot springs and therapy and just the approach of meeting the needs of the whole person. So I think we just have a phenomenal eclectic, wonderful group on our team to really meet some needs in our community. Our community is very unique. We are the poorest county, and our resources are tough. And so I just think we have just a slightly different approach. We also believe, everyone should have choices, and the other school is fantastic. We don't want to take away from that. We just believe that there should also be another choice for families and students in the county, because we are diverse.
Great.
And it was really nice to meet you all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I'm not sure, are there charter schools in that county?
No, ma'am. The closest one to us is the Cottonwood Valley Charter School, which is 100 miles away in Socorro, and we actually have some parents taking their students there. And then there's Aldo Leopold, which is in Silver City, which is further than 100 miles. So those are the two closest to us. And we really feel that it's very sustainable here.
Okay. All right. So next, I know that we don't have Robert here, but do we have anybody else from the Institute of Opportunity, Discovery, and Commitment? Okay. Well, I do know that we have people from First Things Classical Charter School. So Chris, we'll start with you, and then you can introduce your team.
All right, thank you very much. I'm Chris Kirshner with First Things Classical Charter School. We have Stacy Moses is on. I have some of my others that were having trouble because of the link changing, so I'm in the background.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on it. And Stacy, being one of our main educators, I'll let her actually talk about some of the things that we're proposing as far as how we're going to do First Things Classical Charter Schools, and we'll be up in Rio Rancho. Stacy, can you go ahead and take that? You're muted, Stacy.
Yeah, apologize. I couldn't get it unmuted. Thank you, and thank you for welcoming us to the training there. So First Things Classical Charter School is a school that is going to be foundationally classical education, including Latin, and will be focused on primary documents and basic curriculum in the classical tradition. This will include classical literature, foundational primary source history, classical math, basic and focused science. I am a history teacher, so the math and science are a little outside my realm of expertise, but we will be using the curriculum to do cross-content education, and we'll be focusing on whole child education, character, content, skills, the arts, the whole thing. That's kind of a brief overview.
Thank you, Stacey. What else would you like from us, Missy?
Well, isn't David Stoliker on your team as well?
Yeah, and I just resent him the link, so I was waiting for him to
Oh.
respond.
I think he's on now.
He's on.
I'm on.
Okay,
I've
good.
been on it since the beginning. Morning, Missy.
Yeah, he was the first one. Hi, David.
Okay.
So, all right. And then I know you have a teammate, Gloria Salazar. She was attending the Public Education Commission meeting last week, which, or the week before that, which I always think is a good idea if you want to be authorized by the state to go ahead and watch the meetings. All right, so next let's have, well, we don't have Terry Morris, I don't think. Do we have anybody else from the Academy of Relational Learning? And I do apologize again for the change because of the PEC meeting on Monday. I was not able to use that Zoom link because they needed to have that Zoom. What about Laura Cash? Do we have Laura from Continental Divide Classical Academy?
Yeah.
Yay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes, I'm Laura Cash. On this meeting with me, I have Shara Martin. We are located in Cibola County, specifically Grants. We are looking at opening a charter school here because we don't have one here. Closest one is either in Gallup, an hour away, or in Albuquerque, an hour away. We, like the last school, we are going for a classical approach. We feel passionate about getting something open here. Our school, we only have really one option. We have the public school system here, and so it doesn't really give us we don't really have any other options other than that. We like the idea of a classical approach and just kind of, helping kids learn how to learn, as opposed to just going through the motions. I personally feel like that's kind of the way we roll here. I feel like COVID really did us a disservice, as it did everybody. But it feels like we're just passing kids and not really setting them up for success. And so that's kind of why we want to step in and try to make a difference in our community. You guys may have heard of grants before. I feel like we're known for being on the news for bad things. And we actually have a lot of great people here. And we want to magnify that and grow that and better the youth in our community and make our community better in the process. Thank you.
Thanks. And Shara, do you want to say anything, or you good? Okay.
Sorry, I'm running away from my kids. So I homeschool, so we're always in the middle of something. No, I actually recently moved to Grants from Southern Colorado. I lived in a town of 800, but I was our closest area was about the size of Grants, and obviously I homeschool right now. Prior to leaving, we had started a group that was in the process of trying to create something, whether it was charter or private. And so I found out about what was happening here in grants and just wanted to be a part of it. I've been on, in Colorado, I was on a task force that received a grant for the public schools and kind of got, other than being, I had been a dance coach and everything, but other than being just a parent, I was able to see the kind of inner workings of how money is dispersed and grants can be given, and the possibility that there's more options for kids that we're just slow to give them because it's scary and new and different. And I think that it's important that we challenge ourselves for the students in our area so that they can reach their fullest potential.
Awesome. All right. I know we don't have, I don't see Daisy Lira. Is there anybody else from the Hive Education Center charter? Okay. I don't see Angela Feathers. Is there anybody from Sundance Montessori? All right, I do see Alicia Bohannon from Virtual Preparatory Academy of New Mexico. Why don't you go ahead?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having us. This is exciting. So my name's Elisa Bohannon, and I live in Edgewood, and I own and operate at stables there. But I've also been involved in education for a very, very long time. And so we're pretty excited to be able to at least come to the table with an offer for all of our students encompassing the entire state of New Mexico. We are basically career and college readiness as our focus, focusing a lot on the eastern side of the state. And one of the things that is driving this force is the fact that when COVID hit, a lot of our students in the state of New Mexico went and enrolled in Texas schools. So we're pretty excited to be able to offer this. It's going to be a K-12. We're going to offer not only the career and college readiness, but we're going to be doing dual credit and working with many universities. It's going to be, we don't have anything that's large on this side. And so we're very, very, very excited to be able to offer this opportunity. So if you guys have any other questions, I think I'm the only one from our team here, but we have some other retired educators, we have lawyers, we have business people. So we have people that certainly know and are excited about starting, something new for our students, another opportunity.
Great. So, and I see that Angela Feathers has joined us, but I'll let her get herself situated, and we'll go with Karen Warner next for Explore Academy Santa Fe, and then we'll come back to Angela. So good morning, Karen.
Good morning, everybody. My apologies, Missy. I had a call from family and just joined. So are we just doing introductions? I'm so sorry.
We're just doing introductions. I'm sorry. I did not notice that you had not been on. So
yeah, no, thanks. I joined early, but then got a call. So
anyway,
hi, everybody. My name is Karen Warner. I support Explore Academy schools, and we had a group of folks who asked us to consider opening one in Santa Fe. And it's a very unique learning model with student choice elective-like seminars rather than full year courses, although they cover the same standards. And was there something else I should say?
No, and I don't see anybody else from your team either, so that's fine. Okay, and so we're gonna Angela is not in an area where she can introduce herself at this time. So we'll just skip over that, and thank you for that. But, hopefully we'll all be getting to know each other a little bit more throughout our sessions together. So we're going to get into some Charter Schools 101. Charter schools in our state currently have the option to be authorized either through the school district in which you are located or the state through the Public Education Commission. You all successfully submitted your notice of intent to both the state and the district in which you're going to be located. So that is good job. So I want you all to get the mantra with me that public schools in New Mexico, it's not public schools and charter schools, right? We don't say those two things. We say traditional public schools and charter public schools. And this is because a lot of people still don't understand that charter schools are public schools. In other states, they allow for-profit charter schools. We do not allow that in our state. You have to be a not-for-profit, you're a subgovernmental entity. And so as you start to advertise yourselves and build that community, just be mindful that you're a charter public school. And I think that that is a good message to get across. If you do make it through this process and get offered a contract, you'll have to renew in a short period of time. And through the years, we've seen numerous times when community members come to support their school and they'll talk about, I didn't want to send my child to public school. And of course, you are a public charter school. So let's try to remember that. So you operate under a charter, which is a contract that's entered into between the school board, not the head administrator, but the board and its authorizer. It's what allows the school to be open and to receive public funds. Students and their parents choose charter schools. You can't force them to come. They're not assigned to your school. And so they are schools of choice, and that can be a hard ask sometimes to get parents to actually commit to trying something new. And charter schools are subject to greater accountability. You have performance reviews, and you have the instance where you could be closed by your authorizer for failing to meet your agreed upon outcomes. So for those of you who know all this, you can tune out a little bit, but for those of you who are new to it, there's a lot, you're going to learn a lot of acronyms. The PEC is the Public Education Commission. It consists of 10 elected commissioners who serve for staggered terms of 4 years. There's no term limits. They reside in each of their districts, and they are the state authorization commission. So if you get approved, there will be a commissioner that represents you wherever you are. It is a big state, and we have big counties, and we have big districts for our commissioners. But it's always great to know who your commissioner is and invite them to events and such. Then there's the CSD, the Charter Schools Division. We provide support staff to the Public Education Commission as per statute, but we are also here as a resource for all the charter schools that are authorized by the districts as well. Just that the Charter Schools Division doesn't go to those schools to perform the evaluations. And then there's the PED, the Public Education Department, which has 4 major roles of regulation, operation, administration of special services, and leadership of the state program. And so you will be interacting with them, with school budget, with special education, with assessment and accountability. There's a myriad of divisions within the Public Education Department. So the Public Education Commission approves new application schools for those of you who want to apply to be a state authorized. They can also revoke charters. They negotiate contracts. They have policies and procedures that they develop, and they monitor their schools through the Charter Schools Division. The Charter Schools Division, again, provides that support staff to the PEC, and we provide technical supports, like I said, to all schools, like today's training. And then the Charter Schools Division will also make recommendations regarding the approval, denial, suspension, or revocation of a charter of a state chartered school. The PED hears appeals of votes to revoke a charter or not renew a charter from the Public Education Commission and district authorizers. Also, School Budget Bureau is one of the main bureaus that all of the schools, charter schools, work with. Safe and Healthy Schools, Special Education. Like I said, there's so many. So the Charter Schools Act was really structured to ensure and encourage the use of innovative teaching methods that are based on reliable research and effective practices. So, making sure that you really understand the pedagogical format that you're going to use. We've got a couple classical schools. We've got a Montessori school. So, that's your pedagogy. One of the things so the Charter Schools Act gives charter schools a lot of autonomy, and that autonomy, you want to use to be innovative in how you are achieving outcomes for kids. You are still a public school, and you are still subject to all of the requirements that a traditional public school is required to do. And you have to address the needs of all of your students. So even if you have one extremely high needs special education student, you have to fulfill all of those needs. If they have an IEP that says that they require door-to-door transportation, you have to figure that out. You have to figure out where that's going to come from in your budget. The Charter Schools Act also was designed to provide, I was trying to say, opportunities for teachers to be more responsible for the learning and really, drawing on their expertise. Definitely to improve student outcomes. That's the number one goal. At the end of the day, you are a school, and we want outstanding outcomes for all of our students. Provide parents and students with alternatives. Encourage parental and community involvement. You will be doing your budgeting. The board will be doing your budgeting along with your business manager. And so you're held accountable to meeting the department's standards of education and the department's standards of fiscal requirements. And again, that's the board's job. Is they are a mini district. They are a mini authorizer. They're responsible for holding the head administrator to all of the requirements. So we all want to see whether you're going to be trying to authorize with the state or with your district, thoughtful, well-developed applications from capable teams. So if you are approved through this process, you will enter what's called, for the state authorized schools, we call it an implementation year. A district might call it that, or they might call it a planning year. There are checklists, 3 major checklists that need to be completed, actually 4, throughout the year. Those trainings are mandatory. They are not what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, they're mandatory. And if you're authorizing with the state, that's the implementation year is where you'll provide us with the things on the checklist, and then we'll give you feedback on what we, think it might be missing or might need some change. And then you would negotiate a contract with the authorizer. So all of the templates that you'll use for this application process are on the PED's website, the Public Education Commission's page of the PED's website. So as you start, and hopefully this is not your start, hopefully you've already been working, that you're very clear on understanding your and your team's roles. It really is a big lift, and it takes more than one person. Understand what you are going to be promising to deliver. Building up your abilities to read and understand financial statements. A lot of people who have a great deal of educational background experience are the ones who have the drive and the passion to found charter schools. They usually don't also have the financial background. So you really need to make sure that you're finding partnership with people who can help you with that. You want to have a commitment to safeguard your proposed school and its assets, a commitment to ensure that your proposed school will report accurately and regularly on your activities and condition, and you have the courage to develop your proposed school to outlive the founding team. Every year I advocate strongly for, and I kind of wish this was how we would do it to a certain degree, but if you write your application as if you and your team aren't going to be the ones implementing it, I personally believe you'll write a better application because you'll think about it from outside of your head. It's all in your head. How would you write that out as if you were writing instructions or a recipe for somebody else to follow? So I hope that I've made this abundantly clear that charter schools are public schools. You meet the same academic standards as traditional public schools. You are held absolutely to a higher accountability standard than traditional public schools. Your teachers are subject to the same certification requirements. You do have some more flexibility than traditional public schools. That flexibility is in the board hires the head administrator. The head administrator hires their staff. They don't get assigned people. And then you get your money. It comes to you in one big bucket, not literally, but figuratively. And so, we'll be going over how charter schools are funded. But there's not, this is how much money you have for special education. This is how much money you have for English language. This is how much money you have for this. You have to build that into your processes so that you understand how much money those types of students are generating and how much money you need to be allocating. You have to enroll your students through an unbiased lottery system. And you have short, it might seem like a long time, but it is short, reauthorized every 5 years, and it can be less than that. You can get I think we've even had 1 year contracts. And you can have a contract revoked. So they could be revoked midterm, or it could be just not renewed. So the board members at a charter school have the fiduciary responsibility of representing the owners of the school, and the owners of your school will be the citizens of New Mexico, because they're the ones providing the money for it. We expect to see in your application to show your team's capacity to meet each element of the Charter Schools Act. So not just the one main member, but the entire team will have the potential of being asked questions at the capacity interview, and all of the team members should be able to speak to how you intend to improve student achievement, engage in a robust and meaningful way in your community, be accountable for maintaining all of the state educational standards, maintain accountability for all the fiscal requirements, be equitable, culturally and linguistically responsive, and ensure high quality teachers come work for you. So you will have a, excuse me, a governing board that oversees. Their role is really oversight. When you set up your board to be responsible to holding the head administrator accountable to what's in your contract and what's in your performance framework, you will be setting up a good structure for longevity at your school. I don't think a lot of people who run charter schools as a head administrator have a lot of understanding of what they can expect from a board. It is a partnership, and the dynamic is that it's your authorizer, your board, the head administrator, and then their staff. So everybody has an important role. A board is not just a requirement that needs to be ticked off. It is the more engaged a board is in their governance and oversight, the better off a school will be. So thinking about how will you prepare a head administrator to understand and work with a board. So again, you know, you all might be trying to authorize with the state, or you might be trying to authorize with the district. I've already gone over that. So one of the things when I first joined the Charter Schools Division back in 2017 was I kept hearing all of this autonomy. Charter schools have autonomy, charter schools have autonomy. And I thought, well, when I think of autonomy, I think that I have freedom. And I don't think that charter schools have freedom. You are still a public school, so you have to do all of the things that a public school does and is required to do. So you have some flexibility. You have the ability to determine what your mission is. You hire and fire your head administrator, and then they hire and fire everybody else who works for them. The board controls the budget, and you guys can choose your curriculum. But that's kind of it. I think you also have the freedom to fail, right? They don't have a large district that's going to swoop in. It's up to the board. So it's very critical that you're choosing people who are committed to serve as board members, and that your community, as you're asking your community for support, you're also ensuring, you know, they want to support you by serving on the board, that you have partnerships with businesses who want to see your school succeed, and so they will have, you know, volunteer their time to serve as board members. Define and understand and measure success. So everybody who's here today and those of you who aren't all have a great idea of what your community needs for the kids in your community, which is excellent. But not only do you want to be defining and understanding what that means to all of these different levels, you need to understand how you're going to measure that. How are you going to track that? You will have initiatives that you decide to do. The board needs to be tracking that. There needs to be attached to that. We are going to try this and we are going to track it in this way, and we will be reporting out to the board about it in this manner. So, but you know, what does success look like for individual families at your school, the legislative body and the governor level? I've been reading through one of the House bills this morning, and there's always some type of, you know, House bill, Senate bill that goes through that impacts our charter schools. So how do you think your school will be able to really show that you can provide success, that charter schools are public schools and are a viable, good option? Then there's the public education department. You know, we have the statewide accountability. There's safe and healthy schools, there's special education, there's the Martinez and Yazzie lawsuit. Then there's educators, your authorizer, your community, your governance council, and the citizens of New Mexico. So a number of years ago, I asked, you know, how much money would somebody kind of need in order to get a charter school from the NOI to open doors? And I asked one person, so it was not an in-depth survey, and he said about $350,000. So I don't know, you know, if that's Albuquerque prices, Santa Fe prices, grants, I don't know. But it's going to cost money. And new charter applicants do not receive any state funds until July 1st of the year you'd be opening. So that would be, if you make it through this year, this process, that would be July 1st, 2024. All right, so all of our trainings will be presented on Monday mornings from 9 to 12. We might not take the full 3 hours. It's going to depend on your questions. On February 27th will be our next meeting. We'll talk about budget and again about facilities and organizational performance. Then March 27th, we're going to talk about the different parts of the application, the charter schools grant. And then April 24th, the submission of the application, the peer review process, and the PEC process and next steps. So, like I said, you know, you guys, you did submit your NOI to the PED and the district by January 10th. And now we have the trainings, which are provided to you. You can choose to come or not. Your facilities master plan will be due to the Public School Facility Authority by April 17th, 2023. Your application is due no later than 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, June 1st. Then the technical peer review period will be approximately June 2nd to June 22nd. Preliminary analysis of the written application will be provided approximately June 25th. And then the capacity interview will be scheduled between June 28th and 30th. That, depending on the number of applicants that actually submit an application, that might have to change because there's a large group. Then the capacity interview will be analyzed, and there will be community input hearings the week of July 10th through the 13th. Again, we might have to expand that depending on the number of applicants. And so that community input hearing happens in your community where your school intends to be located. So you would want to have as much support as possible. But the traditional public district might send people who don't support you as well. And then the Charter Schools Division will wrap up all of that information into a preliminary analysis not a preliminary, just an analysis by August 4th that will go to the schools and to the Public Education Commission. And then the PEC decision-making meeting will be held on August 25th. So the public and community input hearing will be workday during work hours, as are all of the PEC meetings. And the PEC makes the final decision to deny, approve, or approve with conditions the charter school applications. And they do read all of the applications and the evaluations of the ones who are submitted to the PEC. If you're going to be submitting with the local district, you'll want to reach out and find out from them what their timeline is going to be once your application is submitted and what their process is. So the PEC makes their decision based on, but not limited to, the application, the review team analysis. And the review team, the peer review team, is made up of New Mexican professionals in the charter school world, somebody who has currently or in the past served as the head administrator at a charter school, a business manager at a charter school, a teacher at a charter school, and then other experts. So their analysis of your application, and they run the capacity interviews, and then the results of the community input hearing, and then any clarifying information and statements provided by the announced deadlines. So once you submit your application, you cannot, oh, I forgot this and I need to add this on. That they will not accept anything after that time. The only time you'll have to provide more statements would be during the community input hearing. So you must, if you're going to apply with the state, you need to use the current application kit, which is on the website. Again, if you're going to submit to a district, you need to find out what form they would like you to use. For the PEC's application, there is an executive summary, and then the application, and then there's appendices, and all of them need to be complete when submitted. We always need to know how to get in touch with you. So if you have any changes to your contact information, please let us know ASAP. And we will not send any notices or other information by hard copy unless the law requires us to. So it'll be electronic copies. And you'll have my email address after this, but there's also the charter schools at ped.nm.gov that you can send questions to. All right, any questions so far? Y'all are as quiet as church mice. So facilities are traditionally one of the biggest hurdles. There's just no other way around it. So a quick history, and all of these are links that you can, when you get this, you can delve deeper into. But 1993 is when the initial Charter Schools Act was proposed. Facilities for charter schools was not addressed at that time. In 1999, the act was reauthorized. They removed the state board authorization. 2003, they brought it back. They also created the Public School Facilities Authority in 2003. There still wasn't much around how to provide charter schools with facilities, but there's more interesting funding facts and funding information historical in this Zuni lawsuit. And also in 2003, the Public School Capital Outlay Council implemented standards-based program for capital outlay funding. And in 2005, the Public School Capital Outlay Act was amended to authorize the PSCOC to use the Public School Capital Outlay Fund to create a lease assistance award program. And at the same time, the Charter Schools Act was also enacted, commonly referring to a public building deadline. So there's lots of things in statute and regulation about, districts providing buildings, but that's never really been done in practice. The traditional districts don't want to provide buildings to charter schools. In 2007, the Lease Purchase Act was passed, throughout it was amended, and we had the School Capital Improvements Act was amended. The Public Building Extension and Removal of cap on the amount that could be used. And in fiscal year 19, the lease assistance was covering about 66.2% of charter school lease costs. So the charter schools in existence, depending on the lease that they have and the formula that the PSCOC and PSFA use, some charter schools get all of their building lease reimbursed, and others get just a portion of their lease reimbursed. So technically, charter schools are eligible to receive local property tax distribution through mill levies, but it's not very common. You have to meet certain requirements, and a school district where you're located would have to include you. You have to. I don't think I mean to say FMP there, but they can include you in their bond, but they also don't have to. And so a district going for a mill levy or bond, if they're going to include a charter school, it would be their own district school. They're definitely not going to approve a state authorized charter school. But again, there are eligibility requirements for all of these types of things and awards. You're not allowed to open in a subpar building. It has to be at least as good as the average condition of state schools. So there's an NMCI, a New Mexico condition. I don't know what the M stands for. Index. That all schools have an NMCI rating. And so whatever building that you would be in, if it's been a school, it will already have an NMCI score. New Mexico Condition Index, that's right in front of me. If you're going into a building that's not been a school, it's been a church, it's been a mini mall, then you're going to have to be confident that it's going to get at least as good an average condition index once it's converted. Let's see. So very few charters will rise to the top of the weighted NMCI. So moving on. Some issues with buildings. Lease assistance was never intended to be the primary source of charter school facility funding. So the lease assistance program was not designed to cover 100% of your lease expenses. And it's so it can for some schools, but it's not the norm. Lease assistance is a discretionary program, and so it's at the discretion of the legislative body. It could go away. There have been several reports that show that charter schools were or are over-reporting their gross square footage. So again, this is one of the things that causes consternation amongst legislators that don't like charter schools. And so, you know, when it just takes one charter school to do something that could potentially lead to punitive legislation that impacts all of the charter schools. Reports also show that charter schools are not meeting the lease assistance requirements in application. You have to know that charter schools cannot incur any debt, which causes you to have difficulty in obtaining loans. The other thing that's hard to obtain loans and leases is the fact that you have a 5-year lease, a 5-year term. So because you won't be under contract for at least a year. And then, you know, they still can, they'll contract with you then, but the vote won't happen until June for commencement of operations. So June of 2024 is the first time that you would get a vote that you can open in August or whenever you intend to open. So again, I talked a little bit about this. Districts do not want to coordinate with charter schools regarding facilities. They just don't. We also don't have a database, which includes a list of all the unused public buildings. Would that make sense? Absolutely. Does one exist? No. So House Bill 43 was to fund at the New Mexico Finance Authority for funding charter school facilities. They strengthened language regarding districts notifying charters of empty facilities. Again, they can strengthen it all they want. If we can't get the districts to do it, we just can't. They removed square footage component of charter school facilities, which I think everybody in the charter schools division is really pleased with because we don't have to go around measuring everybody's buildings. And of course, it wasn't on the exterior wall, it was on the interior wall. It was a nightmare. So there's a lot around facilities. First of all, you're gonna have a hard time finding one. And you're gonna have to figure out how you're gonna secure that lease. And you're going to have to get the NMCI, the New Mexico Condition Index. You're going to have to get e-occupancy certification, which is educational occupancy certification, in addition to the you know, what you have to do with this, with the county that you're in, the business license and fire and safety. But what I want you to take away from this is that it's rare for you to get 100% of your lease reimbursed to you. So there is a standards and systems-based program through the PSCOC. Most of the time, charter schools aren't will not be a priority in the NMCI rating system. And so and we have had some schools that have made the priority. And, you know, it's not a list you want to be on. If you're on the priority for the NMCI condition index, where the PSCOC is going to actually help you with improving your building, you are going to be in a horrible, horrible building. I know that there was a charter school a number of years ago that colleagues of mine said, you know, going up to the second floor to use the adult restroom was a choice you had to make because it was so scary to go up those stairs just because the floor did not seem very stable. So, you know, but the more of the traditional public schools are going to be in line before charter schools for any of that funding. There's a lease assistant program through PSCOC. It's really the only source for most charter schools to fund a facility, and it is discretionary, so it's not permanent. Districts can include their charter schools in bond resolutions. But, okay, so you would have to submit your facilities master plan to them, but traditionally they don't include charters. So there's a PSFA website that has design, development, and approval information for you to review. There's a link to it here. You have to include evidence that you have developed a facilities master plan. This is an exercise to see that you can do the process. We're not expecting you to actually find a building that you can start leasing. It's in part so that you are aware of what you're facing with regards of getting buildings, and again, that you can go through all of the steps and understand what that process is before you're approved. On this website, though, you have to, it's not going to work unless you have Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge. So don't use Firefox, don't use Explorer, don't use one of those two. What are those things called? Anyway, platforms. So in statute, your plan has to be submitted for approval at least 45 days prior to the application date. So our application deadline is June 1, right? Yeah. And so I just counted 45 days prior, and that puts it at, what did I say on the previous slide? I think it was April 17th. So just also be aware that when the governing body of a charter school determines that a lease purchase arrangement is in the best interest of the charter school, the governing body shall forward to the Public Education Department a copy of the proposed lease purchase agreement and shall specify the source of funds the governing body has intended to make payments due under the lease purchase arrangement. So this is not for immediate. I just want you to be aware of it once you are getting to the point where you're going to rent a facility, because that's going to want to happen, you know, at a time where it's going to all have to happen really quickly. And if you're going to rent a building that doesn't have e-occupancy, the PSFA is not going to drop everything and run to you in July to make sure you get your e-occupancy. That can take time, and so you know, can you get into the building, get e-occupancy maybe before you've rented it, type of stuff. Um, so you cannot go into debt. There has to be no legal obligation for the charter school to continue the lease from year to year or to purchase the real property. And the financing agreement needs to provide that the lease shall be terminated if sufficient money is not available to meet the current lease payments. So in other words, the state is not going to be on the hook for your building if you can't pay for it. Lease purchase arrangement and finance agreement are used interchangeably throughout, but it's any means of agreement for leasing of a building. And again, it's the governing body of the charter school that is entering into a lease, just like they enter into a contract. And they cannot enter into a lease purchase arrangement without the prior approval of the public education department. So part of the PSFA checklist states it's to assist governing bodies of charter schools in submitting their proposed lease purchase arrangements to the public education department for the required statutory approval. It is a guidance document to be used by the governing bodies in submitting their proposed lease purchase arrangements. The checklist is not necessarily a comprehensive or exclusive list of all of the public education department's requirements for approval. And in specific instances, the PSFA may require the governing body to submit additional documents or other information pertaining to the particular business transactions and financial arrangements involved. So I wanted to show you some of our most recent schools that have made it through state authorization, what their lease amount is, which is that second column. Membership means how many students they have. The mem rate is their mem is short for membership rate is $815 or 7% of membership. And I should have put the numbers in red for the difference. I'm going to do that before I send it to you. So Thrive Community, which this is their first year that they've opened. They opened in August of 2023 or 2022, excuse me. Their lease amount is $193,321. They have 111 students and they are getting $90,532 in reimbursements. So they have to come up with the additional $100 and almost $3,000. So Rio Grande Academy of Fine Arts, which is down in Rio Rancho, they have to come up with $182,000. Explore Las Cruces has to come up with $128. Aces Technical, $125. Solari Collegiate, $300,000. And they built a building. So theirs is a lot higher because they actually they had grants and they got a construction. They built a building. And then Raíces del Saber, which is down in Las Cruces, they have the least amount that they have to come up with. So be considering as you're thinking about your budget, as you're thinking about how you're going to pay for all the things that you have to pay for, how are you going to make that difference up? Any questions about that? Let's take a quick break until 10:15 and stretch your legs, get some water, use the restroom. All right. Hope you guys are able to stretch your legs. Nobody ran away, so that's good. Go back to sharing my screen. All right, so performance framework. So I've mentioned the charter contract often. So you will have a charter contract, and in your charter contract, a description of your educational program and your mission will be included in there. Those are some of the things you're promising to deliver. And then you will have performance frameworks, which are in part some of the ways that the authorizer measures whether or not you are delivering on what you have promised. So it is required that all chartering authorities do establish a framework that sets forth the academic and operations performance indicators and performance targets that will be guiding your evaluation. So you will be evaluated every year, and you will be renewed hopefully every 5 years. So the performance framework is the authorizer's way of saying, in our opinion, you are or are not performing as we expect you to be performing, so that you and your boards have the opportunity to address the issues in a timely manner and hopefully make improvements throughout the term of your contract. There are also financial performance framework for state authorized schools. There may very well be for district as well. So if your authorizer, and they're providing their oversight of the school, might feel like you need to have an intervention activities, you might be given a corrective action plan. Again, I advocate that you want to set your school up so that the board is monitoring and getting reporting on all of these indicators in the performance framework and the conditions of your contract before the charter schools division or your authorizer is coming out to review you, because then your school can know where you're doing well and where you need to make improvements before your authorizer does, and therefore you can set into place corrective action plans instead of having them imposed on you. So again, if you're state authorized, we're going to be looking at your academic performance, including your mission goals. So you will have to have a measurable goals around your mission that are achievable, that will be reported on every year. Organizational performance and financial performance. So again, the objectives of the framework are to provide clarity to you and your school around the process and timeline for collecting the framework data. Hopefully streamline the data collection to decrease a burden on the charter schools. You will not just be reporting to the charter schools division and school budget. There's also accountability and assessment and special ed and a whole myriad of other divisions that are going to be wanting reports. The framework considers the overall school academic performance across a range of different indicators, including unique measures. And so that's why your mission goals are a more unique measure specific to your school. And you'll also have academic data that isn't just the statewide, it'll be interim assessments as well. The framework is supposed to ensure all data and evidence can be reliably and accurately collected, and measures can be reliably and accurately evaluated. So say a school is more of an arts-based school where you want to, your objective and your mission is more, it's not as quantitative as, say, a STEAM school. You can still, write mission goals around all of that, But you have to figure out a way so that's not just subjective. It's not, it's something that's would be repeatable no matter who is evaluating the work. Establish financial metrics that provide clarity about the financial health of the charter schools. Establish clear policies and procedures for how performance frameworks will inform the authorizer's actions and decisions. So again, like the Public Education Commission has a ladder of concern where they will, see the schools know how the authorizer will address particular issues and communicate with the school. And then they also provide annual performance reports that are available publicly to families and the schools. And so as an example, over the term of a contract, so I told you charter contracts are 5 years, but we cannot provide you all of the data from your 5th year of your contract, because we'll be currently in the 5th year of your contract when we're up for renewal. So this is what a report typically would look like for the state over the term of a contract. So this goes from 2018 through 2022, and it lists out all of the current performance framework indicators for the state. The Public Education Commission is currently working on updating their performance framework, but this is what historically we've been using. And so every year, your head administrator would be given this report. Hopefully they share that with the board in a meeting. And for the first year here, 2018, 2019, they don't have anything in red. They've got a couple of yellows, and they've got a couple of things that aren't applicable to them. This is difficult these particular years because in 2018, 2019 is when Governor Lujan Grisham got rid of the ADAF letter grade for schools, and we did not have anything in its place. And then 2019, 2020, what happened that year? Oh yeah, we had a global pandemic, and so we didn't have academic data. So there, we didn't have good statewide academic data. And mission goals used to be voluntary. They used to be not required, but they are currently required. So, thinking about how you can be constantly working to show why your school should continue to exist, why your school is a good option for the students in your community. So the academic framework includes measures that allow your authorizer to evaluate your school's academic performance and assess whether the academic program is a success and whether the charter school is implementing the academic program effectively. Academic outcomes are the #1 desire for the Public Education Commission, the Public Education Department, and all authorizers. Everybody in the legislative body, the governor, everybody wants New Mexico to not be ranked 50th. So being able to assure increases in student academic achievement for all groups of students. And so, as you're thinking about your proposed schools and your governing boards that are going to be overseeing them, how will those boards be focused on understanding how each subgroup of student at your school is doing? Not the overall is less important than each individual subgroup, and the overall is important. But if you're doing really well, but your special ed students are suffering, that's going to make your renewal processes more painful, more complicated. So It's also an important factor on whether or not a school is going to renew or revoke a charter. The biggest reason that charter schools close in any state is through financial mismanagement, though, either intentional or unintentional. A board not being focused on ensuring the school's financial sustainability has led to more schools closing themselves than authorizers closing schools. So your mission goal, they are negotiated. So throughout this process, you will come up with your mission specific goals as part of this application process. Those may or may not be what you negotiate with the authorizer if you make it through this process. So the authorizer wants to make sure that they are quality and rigorous. Academic indicators may include proficiency in math, reading, and science overall and by subgroup. Proficiency basically means, are they at grade level? The progress and proficiency for your English language learner students. The growth of proficiency for all of your subgroups. If you have a high school, your graduation rates. If you have a high school, your career and college readiness. Your chronic absenteeism. So we now use chronic absenteeism. So even excused absences are counted as part of the chronic absenteeism calculation. Your educational survey, which is basically, a survey that parents fill for young children and children who are older can fill out for themselves. And then your mission goals. The financial framework is really populated on previous year data because of the way the audits come out, which is why it's hypercritical for boards to be more focused on their own finances, because you have more up-to-date information than the state has. You have the ability to see if you're sustainable or not, and take action to try to bolster your sustainability before the state's going to come at you and say, you're not doing as good of a job here. And then the organizational framework. This is why the Charter Schools Division comes to state authorized schools to perform site visits. We are looking at evidence around all of the organizational performance framework indicators to make sure that you are meeting the required state and federal laws. So that would be things like looking at your student files, looking at your teacher files, looking at your emergency drill log, a whole host of things. So looking at your educational program, your financial management, your governing body performance, the school's environment, employee and student policies, and compliance with all laws, rules, policies, and terms of the charter contract. So the Charter Schools Division and the state authorizer will be reviewing to make sure that you are following your own bylaws, your own policies. So what's your plan for your board to make sure that they're following their own bylaws and policies? So annually during this performance review period, schools will submit typically throughout the year different academic, financial, and organizational data, not only to their authorizer, but to other PED departments as well, and potentially other governmental entities. You might have grants that you have that you report to. Then the Charter School Division site visit annually come out and review the data that you collect to ensure that you're fulfilling the performance framework. If you make it through this process, you will have a new school visit 2 weeks prior to your opening date. Then if you're in your renewal year, you have a renewal school visit, which covers pretty much all of an annual site visit, but includes additional things such as interviewing board members and staff and students and parents. So the Charter Schools Division evaluates the schools against their framework every year, and then give the schools and the PEC their feedback to let you know where you stand. So again, if you haven't cottoned on that, I really want you to have a strong board that's focused on data and is data driven. I like this quote: data-driven governance is the philosophy that charter school boards should constantly focus not on inputs or intentions or efforts to create a great school, but on outcomes that measure student learning, financial sustainability, and organizational compliance. Using authorizer-specific rubrics, these boards break from the traditional emphasis on programs and policies in favor of clear-eyed, fact-based focus on what goals their schools need to achieve. So your head administrator is like the cheerleader who's like, look at how awesome our school is. And the board is like, yeah, that's great, but I want to see, the data. I want to understand that we're doing what our contract says we're going to do. We're doing well on our performance framework, that we're doing all of the things that we're required to do. So as you continue on this process, I want you to think about what is your founding team hoping to achieve in this process. Founders syndrome is a real thing. It's one of the biggest threats I've seen to a school's ability to be sustainable. And we've had some schools close because of founders syndromes, and they closed themselves. They weren't closed by the authorizer. And the founding syndrome is that the founders kind of get in the way of the school being successful. They don't know how to separate themselves. The school, if you get approved, your school is like a living creature, but it doesn't have its own brain, it doesn't have its own memory, and it needs constant support from the board in order to be sustained. And it's a public school. It's a public school. What specific outcomes do you anticipate? So why should somebody choose your school over the traditional public school or another existing charter school? What outcome could you anticipate that they're going to get from that experience at your school? What's the most important problem you want to solve for your community and your students? What does achievement of that goal look like? How will you know when you have reached that goal? How will you know which actions are having a positive impact? Because not every thing that a school tries works, and that's fine. But you don't want to waste time on something that's not working. So how do you know that something's working, not working, and how are you going to be tracking, monitoring, and adjusting? And where's your money coming from? If you don't get any money until July 1 of 2024, how are you going to be doing this? So how will you express all the wonderful things that you plan to achieve in your proposed school as data that will be comprehensible to your future authorizer, community, staff, and governing board? All right, so doing your research, this application process and the implementation of your process and the renewal process and running a school all requires research. And you have to, that's why it's so critical to have a team. I think that a team, you know, one of the things that I see with renewal applications is it's usually the head administrator being the sole person responsible for the renewal application. I think that the board should play a role in it. If nothing else, board members, if they can't help with research, if they can't help with some of the writing, they can help with reading through what's been written. They can see, does it make sense to me? Do I understand it? Will the authorizer understand it? Would, you know, a member of the community understand it if they were reading this? You will need to review statutes and regulations, policies, guidance, and technical manuals. So, what have I done with this slide? I have to fix this. So these are some questions that I found a couple of years ago about special education in charter schools. And I apologize for this looking weird. I can't fix it while I'm in presentation mode, but I will fix it before I send it out to you so that it's not overlapping like that. But preparing your schools for being excellent, you know, in providing special education services, this is the time to do it as you're dreaming it up and building it through your policies and procedures. So as a charter school operator, what is my role related to special education as I work with our planning team during this phase? This is the ideal time to begin planning for all children who may become students in your charter, including students with disabilities. You are assuming the role of an administrator and operator, as well as the instructional leader for your future faculty, parents, and students. You obviously cannot plan for each child before you begin to enroll students, but you can give consideration to children with disabilities as you are developing the initial plans for your school. So again, thinking about all of your policies and procedures from a standpoint of not just your typical learners, but your special needs kids. You know, there's behavior policies, discipline policies, all sorts of policies. And so how will you be considering atypical learners and kids with other needs as you think about your school? So it's critically important that you consciously plan. And it's, again, like, this is the best time to do it. Consciously plan for having students with disabilities in every aspect of your school. So you will have to accept children no matter what. You have to accept children who come in through your application, and you will have children with a variety of needs. So considering, you know, we're a small school in our first year, it doesn't matter. You have to provide a free and appropriate public education from day one of opening up your doors. Also think about how special education students might be limited in your current mission statement, making sure that your mission and your vision statement are accessible to everybody, regardless of their culture, their educational needs, and their physical abilities. So how making sure that you know, kids with physical disabilities, learning disabilities, behavioral issue kids, you know, how are they going to be addressed at your school? How are they going to be enabled to have outstanding outcomes at your school? So you can plan for students with a wide variety of different abilities, following 6 major legal principles contained in the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So, you know, you can't have a lottery form or counsel students out of your school. That's against the law. So you have to accept the students. You cannot ask them if they have disabilities. They have to, if they apply in your lottery, you have to take them. You have to have an individual education program plan team for IEPs. You will get students with IEPs, but you will also have students who teachers will assess and feel like maybe they need to have an IEP, and so there needs to be a process there. I mentioned FAPE, free appropriate public education. Least restrictive environment means that, you know, children aren't shunted off into another room to do some type of remediation. However, if a student has an IEP that says that they need to have some type of physical therapy or occupational therapy that's not appropriate to do in front of other children, then you have to, you know, where are we going to be providing that for the student in a more private area? There's due process and parental involvement. It's strange to me, but it can be very hard to get some parents to engage in this process, and it can be hard to get some parents to engage a little bit less in the problem. You know, they get a little bit too involved. And then a non-discriminatory evaluation. So you will be responsible for providing special education. So it's important that you, or at least someone on your planning team, has the knowledge and expertise in education of students with disabilities. Planning should also include an orientation about the responsibilities for the full planning team and review of items on the special education section of the New Mexico Public Education Department's website. So that is what I have for you today. We ended an hour early, but I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to stop recording in case you want to ask a question.